Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Libra and your moon in Cancer. This is an interesting combination because we're talking about the elements of air and water. And air and water are coming from completely different places, and yet here you have them in very prominent positions, the sun and the moon. And if your sun and moon are within a certain degree span of one another, and it will vary from astrologer to astrologer. So if you have generated a chart, you can see and it should have an aspects table. I use astro.com. That's a free chart generator. And you can see if it's considered a square because these two signs square one another off. But for it to be an official square, it has to be, maybe 8 degrees apart at the most, but who knows, some astrologers may even have a wider orb than that. So the bottom line is that they really have a different way of perceiving life and expressing themselves. Now, the sun is how we express ourselves as individuals. So it's that creative, the individual creativity, our sense of self that we're projecting onto the outer world. And this is why it's associated with the professions that people choose, because they tend to line up with a person's interests. Now, obviously, that doesn't always happen, but at the very least, a person may choose a career based on their talents. And sometimes we have talents that we just seem to be born with, and we might take them for granted. Like an artist or something like that, and we don't even develop them because they're already pretty developed. And that's why you see sometimes people who have this amazing talent and they're not using it because there's not like a strong drive within themselves to kind of perfect it. It's just there, so they take it for granted. But that is definitely part of something to express because you're helping other people, you're sharing this beauty that you have. And with this combination, there can be somebody who has artistic abilities in one way or the other. But aside from that, the sun is, our potential in this lifetime from this specific lifetime's perspective, not the, entirety of who we have been in lifetime after lifetime. The moon is considered karmic because it has deeply ingrained responses to life. Even some of the things, I don't know if this is, I would say this is pretty true, is that if you think about phobias, we could say that that is connected to the moon in the sense that it's the emotion of fear that is being generated by something. But phobias can be from things that we have no trauma connected to in this lifetime. You might have a baby who's terrified of water and they've never experienced any kind of threat of drowning or anything like that. And we might tie it to a past life and say that person probably drowned in another lifetime, and they still have a very clear memory of that, and they are still holding on to it. So I guess the moon in a way is memory, and certainly Cancer is associated with having a very good memory. So even though this is not the Mercury position, which can be the mind, the moon in Cancer, I think, can give you a very vivid memory of past events. And this can sometimes be great, especially if you are like a writer and you can kind of recall these things and put it into your writing, or if you're a history teacher, but it can be rather limiting, self-limiting, if you're stuck in the past too much and you can't let go of things that have happened that have been traumatic or what have you. The moon rules Cancer. So it is connected to Cancer, and it also can symbolize or, like represent fluctuations. So wherever your moon is in your chart, you may see things are kind of changing all the time in that area of life. But also, since the moon is in Cancer, it's the sign that it rules, the person may be quite moody, because we think of the moon as different emotions, so the person may be changeable in their emotions. And this can be problematic for the sun that's masculine versus the feminine moon, that wants to kind of maybe has a lot of ambitions that they want to fulfill, and they don't want to be bogged down in their emotions, especially not an air sign like Libra. And so this square that the sun and moon represent is that tension between wanting to be detached, wanting to just have a light and breezy kind of an air sign demeanor, and then having these either sentimental emotions, maybe a bit of melancholy, longing for something that is no longer in your life, that kind of, stuck in the past feeling. Those kinds of things can bog down the sun in Libra and make them feel like they have this sensitive part of themselves. But that's not necessarily all bad. There's a definite feminine quality to these two placements. You also should look at your rising sign for how you appear to others. And I'm talking about at first glance. And see if see if the rising sign makes aspects to either the moon or the sun, or at the very least is in compatible elements. So for instance, when I first was going to do this video, I immediately thought of Suzanne Summers, because she has the sun in Libra, moon in Cancer, and she has Taurus rising. And some of you who are on the younger side might not even know who that is, or maybe you've heard her name, but you don't know who she is. Basically, she was probably the biggest sex symbol after Farrah Fawcett in the late 70s, because she starred on a sitcom, Three's Company, that was #1. It was a smash hit. And she starred with another woman, as well as, Joyce DeWitt. And then the other star was John Ritter. And he was the one that was paid the most on that show. And because she was so popular, she left. I don't know if it was after 1 season, 2 seasons, but pretty, soon after the show began, she wanted to make what he made or something like that. And the public really, I think, was down on her for that. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was generated by the industry trying to demonize her. And eventually she got fired. They went back and forth. She appeared on some episodes because it was contractual or something. But eventually they replaced her with, I think, at least one other blonde, what they would call a bimbo type of airhead, which was the kind of character, I shouldn't say bimbo, but, like an airhead. That was her. She was playing the dumb blonde role, but it was a comedic role, and she was very good at it. And air sign women are, made for those kinds of roles, because first of all, they tend to be, especially a Libra woman, can be very attractive. And then on top of that, they can be very ditzy. They can play that airhead because they're air signs, that spacey quality. And, Marilyn Monroe was a Gemini. She may have even had the moon in Gemini, but I'm not sure about that. It might have been in Cancer, but I know her sun was in Gemini. And so the reason I'm bringing up Suzanne Summers is because she was kind of blacklisted from the industry. And then she came back, and I don't remember, she might have done theater, but eventually she came up with the Thigh Master. And it was, like some exercise equipment, to tone your thighs. And it sold like hotcakes. She made I don't know how much money, but a lot of money. And that she became a businesswoman. And then she did another sitcom, at least one other sitcom, and did other stuff. But the point is that this combination can be a woman. I'm talking about specifically a woman who is deceptively brilliant, because you may be physically attractive, you may be very feminine in your appearance, mannerisms, but Libra is a masculine sign, and it's a cardinal sign. It's a take charge kind of sign. Libra is one of the best signs in this regard, of the cardinal signs, because it knows how to take control without being, what's the word, like unpleasant, or, having other people dislike that you're doing so, that you're taking that leadership role. Because one thing about Libra is that you're very much into input from other people. You're not wanting to do things all alone like an autocrat. I'm trying to, maybe because it's morning, I'm having trouble thinking of the proper words, but you really do solicit other people's opinions on things. And when you do that, even if those people are your underlings, they will feel like they have some stake in things, that they're not just at the mercy of a boss who is just ordering them around, but that they are being listened to and that they are being respected for their opinion. So that's what makes you a great boss. And I think that there can also be a shrewd business person. And by the way, I didn't mean to suggest if you're a male that has this combination that you can't have the same thing. I was speaking about the feminine quality in this combination for women, because the sun in Libra can make a woman want to be a lady boss. But sometimes there is an appearance which doesn't seem like it goes along with somebody who's necessarily that ambitious or could be a good leader, and yet you are. I think that you are very good, and you're also very intuitive because you have a water sign moon. And with Cancer, I feel like there's this ability to tune into other people. And this is great for business because it can kind of like make a person tune into what other people would want. And that can be very good for trying to decide what to sell, getting a pulse on what is happening. So you may favor business because it's a double cardinal sign. Yeah, that's another thing too, because Cancer being a cardinal sign, I think that you're capable of working for somebody else and taking orders, but it's like you're made to be in that leadership role. And with the moon in Cancer, you may have, and if you're a woman in particular, because women are the ones who give birth, you may have a strong desire to have children, but it may be kind of, that's where that square is coming from, because the Libra energy wants to express itself in that outer world. So there might be a conflict there. And it's a head versus heart conflict. That's what these squares are between the sun and the moon. And so one of the things in relationships that you need to really pay attention to is if you're the kind of person who tends to be codependent, if you have a tendency to say yes when you mean no, and lack assertion, the ability to assert yourself properly. One thing that both these signs share is more of a passive aggressive approach to expressing anger, to dealing with conflicts. You don't really want to be confrontational. That is definitely not what Libra is all about. Libra is the peacemaker. But in my experience, observing people with the sun sign in Libra, it seems to me that they attract their fair share of drama anyway. And my feeling is the reason that this is happening is because that which you resist persists. You have to make peace with conflict. You can't run away from it because conflict is part of life. Sometimes disagreements arise, and you don't have to feel threatened by disagreements. You don't have to feel like it means that you're bad if you don't want to do something somebody else wants you to do, or somebody doesn't want you to do something that you want to do. It doesn't make either one of you wrong, but how you handle it makes all the difference. If you are capable of standing your ground in a way that is agreeable, that is not hostile, and being confident in your decision and not feeling guilty about it, you will likely diffuse something that could be worse. But a lot of times Libra individuals will go along to get along, and then they resent it bitterly later. And they will make that person pay for it, believe me, one way or the other. A Cancerian trick is sulking or just withdrawing, going into its shell, the crab into its shell. And it's almost like giving somebody the cold treatment in a sense, especially with that sun in Libra. There can be a blowing hot and cold aspect to your personality as it is. And that's another thing too, is that you're very kind-hearted. And this makes it hard for you sometimes to put your foot down with people in your life where you need to do so. That's a form of, like I said, assertion. Because you're sympathetic, because you also, I think with Libra, there's a strong need for approval. And these kinds of things, that is one of the areas to work on, because you're not being approved for your true self when you're approved for doing something that you really don't want to do. And so it's not much of a victory. It's not much of a compliment or anything like that. And with Cancer, sometimes there's martyrdom. I've done all this and that person doesn't appreciate me, feeling sorry for yourself. And with the moon in Cancer, this can come out very strongly. And also look at house placement of the moon. 12th house, a big place for self-pity. These kinds of things are destructive to you because they put you in the role of the victim, the person who's being put upon. But they're also destructive to your relationship because it can be a form of manipulation. The other person can feel guilted by your incessant need for love and affection. Love and affection is natural and normal. But if you feel like you were deprived of it growing up, to demand it from a partner in a very aggressive sort of way, or a very, I would say, incessant affection or attention, can be what trips you up, because you may never have a a satiation point where you feel like you are loved enough. And that's why it's an inside job. Libra is a sign that loves companionship. So when you love something, it's important to look at the opposite of that and see what it is that kind of keeps you apart from wanting that thing. And in this case, we're talking about solitude. Solitude is very important because having time to yourself gives you a chance to really tune into your needs and not be influenced by other people. I feel like all moons, well, I'll say in particular, Cancer, moon in Cancer and moon in Pisces, because Scorpio is a little bit different. Scorpio is a little bit complicated in that regard, but definitely moon in Cancer, moon in Pisces tend to be very impressionable, very soaking up the vibes of people around them. So it's important to be around people that lift you up on a regular basis, that are not, Debbie Downers or just have a lot of problems and suck the life force out of you, but that, you find uplifting and who are kind to you, are respectful of you, because you can be very affected by your environment. And where was I going with that? Because I was trying to say something about what the moon represents in terms of how you're going to express your emotions. It's going to affect your ability to be alone. Yeah, because I was talking about solitude, and when, a Libra person tends to be very indecisive. And I feel, I've experienced this myself where I've had a Libra person ask me, what do you think of this and this? And it's like, it doesn't matter what I think about, it's like if and women do this sometimes to each other. What do you think of this dress? Asking their friend. Now that friend may have different tastes. They may say that's a hideous color. And yet the Libra sun sign person picked out that dress and likes that color. But they want that approval. They want other people to think that what they are wearing is attractive. It doesn't matter because you were attracted to it. So it means that that was important to you. Going back to the self, going back to what is the most important thing. And the only way you can cultivate a sense of self is by spending time alone, not by always being with other people. And yet that might be very challenging for some Libra individuals. Cancer as well. Cancer can be kind of a emotionally dependent sign. So in love, you have to take care not to get involved with the wrong person who reinforces feelings of insecurity and lack of self-acceptance. Because they don't accept you, then you don't accept yourself. And also make sure that you have a meeting of the minds with this person, because, again, sometimes Libra gets dazzled by somebody's physical appearance, and yet they don't have an intellectual rapport. You are an intelligent person. With the moon in Cancer, you may be like a school teacher or something like that, and you may love to instill the love of learning to children, or maybe it could be at the college level or high school, and you will tend to be that way in your private life. Like even when you don't get paid, like you might be well-read, you may love art, going to galleries and museums and things like that, and cultivating, like an appreciation of culture. And it's important that you include that as something that is crucial for your relationship. And so if you're with somebody who barely can talk, they don't even like to talk very much, that might be, a bit torturous for you. Maybe if you have Mercury in Scorpio, it wouldn't be as upsetting, but in a lot of cases I think it would be very frustrating and boring for a Libra person not to have that intellectual stimulation with somebody that can carry on an interesting conversation with you. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that this resonated, and if you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.